6 minutes past 9 o'clock here on KNCE Taos, 93.5 FM, streaming at truetaosradio.com. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Howie. Sticking around for another hour to bring you Mainstreet Radio from Taos Mainstreet. Charles Whitson sitting across the console. Hey, Charles.
Good morning, Howie, and good morning to all the beautiful listeners out there.
Thanks for making it in again. We're in episode 2, I guess you could call it. We did a little test run during the morning show last month, and we're going to try to make this a monthly thing, Mainstreet Radio, and perhaps it'll be happening on this Tuesday, the third Tuesday of each month from 9 until 10. So, so far, so good. I think we're off to a good start.
Yeah, and excited to be here. Excited about this show and the concept of Mainstreet Radio. Something that we really want to bring to the community are topics, people, projects, ideas that are all really relevant to the community or really relevant to the revitalization of downtown Taos. And today we're really excited to have a few really powerhouse guests with us to talk about this idea of destination stewardship.
Excellent. Well, let's start from the beginning and just give a little introduction to what Taos Mainstreet is. I'm looking at the website, taosmainstreet.org. Prominent right on the homepage, downtown is for everyone. We believe that the Plaza District is for everyone. It is a safe, walkable, and bikeable place with a strong, diverse economy and thriving businesses. That sounds like a pretty simple explanation of what's trying to happen down there. How do you introduce Mainstreet to folks who might not know?
Well, just the highlight you said first is downtown is for everyone. Mainstreet is an organization that exists here in Taos, but it's a movement that actually is happening across the entire country through Mainstreet America, across the state of New Mexico through Mainstreet New Mexico. And then we're the local organization here in Taos that's tasked with really ensuring that downtown is for everyone. Sounds simple, but there's a lot of work and thought that goes into making that a reality.
Sure. Charles Whitson with Taos Mainstreet, taosmainstreet.org if you want to follow along at home and learn about all the great work that's been going on for a few years now. How long has Mainstreet Taos been kind of an entity?
This is our 6th year.
All right.
As an official nonprofit Mainstreet organization.
Awesome. Well, let's not waste any time and introduce our guests. I know we have plenty to talk about in a small amount of time. So, Charles, I'll let you introduce who we're here with this morning.
Sure. So first, we want to introduce Ilona Spruce, who is the Marketing and Tourism Director for Taos Pueblo, a member of the Destination Stewardship Network, and somebody who I think has participated in this process since the beginning. So, Ilona, if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your work and your intersection with Destination Stewardship.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So Destination Stewardship really came into my arena because a lot of it has to do with exactly what we do with the Pueblo directly as far as tourism goes. There's been so much discussion on whether tourism is beneficial to the community or not. And so we really wanted to seek that opinion out and find out why, find out who benefits, find out where and how we can maneuver tourism so that we all have a piece of the pie. And that's really where it came from. And so it's been great to be a part of it. I was initially asked by Contessa Trujillo to be part of the stewardship network, and she really was the one who kind of conjured all of these faces together so that way there would be a spread of everybody from the community to have opinion and voice matter within this conversation. And so now we're here, and now we have Jessie with us as the manager, and so it's really come into fruition from just everyone, sitting in that room asking if this was just going to be another plan.
Right. There's been plenty over the years.
Yeah. To how are we actually going to use this and implement it? And so we're here. We're in that phase. And thankfully with Mainstreet and Charles, we've been able to maneuver that with the funding maneuvering through them, and then being able to bring on a manager and being able to continue to conduct, ideas of what we think stewardship is as far as tourism goes
Yeah.
within the community.
Now, I know when I think of the word steward or stewardship, it's someone taking on the role of caring for something, usually a physical space or thing. But this, I'm getting the sense, destination stewardship is kind of taking on responsibility for what tourism means and can do to a community, for better or worse, right?
Yeah. So we really looked at how tourism is being conducted within the town of Taos and how it impacts the town. I mean, we all know that we are a destination. We know that people come here for a variety of reasons, but a huge reason is the cultural component. And, Taos wouldn't be Taos if we didn't have this mesh of cultures colliding that has been happening for over, thousands of years. Sure. Not just when the Spanish showed up, but even pre-contact. We've always had visitors in our home. So, it wasn't the norm, especially during COVID, not to have visitors in our community as far as the Pueblo goes.
Yeah.
But, it really was an eye-opener after that time, realizing how much we do depend on the visitors coming through.
Sure.
So
yeah. Jessie Hook is here as well. I would love for you just to kind of give a general background about the Destination Stewardship Network, what it is in a physical sense, the entity itself, and then what the work will entail. Obviously, a lot of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Jessie. I'm the Destination Stewardship Network Manager. It's been a really amazing process. I've been in this role for about 6 months now. And the Destination Stewardship Network, just like Ilona was saying, is a coalition of people that have come together to discuss and act on what does it mean to take care of this place, and a place that does depend and interface with tourism. So it's a really dynamic conversation and happens in a few different forms. If you want something tangible for what destination stewardship as a network looks like, we've been meeting monthly for quite some time now, even before I came into the project. And those spaces look like looking at different subjects within what it means to steward a destination, and making sure to hear from not just the same opinions, and to really wrestle with the yes and of tourism, and that paradox of tourism, as I like to say, of, okay, there are a lot of really wonderful things and there are a lot of pressures, and how can we work together from our different seats to mitigate those pressures. So at the end of our discussion today, we can talk a little bit more about what's coming down the pipeline, and what people can expect in terms of programming and community engagement and resources for the community. But yeah, it's been a really amazing space to be in. So huge thank you to the town and the county and Taos Mainstreet and everyone, such as Ilona, who's been a part of the process from the very, very beginning. It's been a joy.
Yeah. Charles, anything you want to add and kind of tie it all together, and how Mainstreet, what Mainstreet's role is in kind of helping get the word out and just continuing what we're trying to do here?
Sure. So I think, throughout the planning process, there was a nagging question that the steering committee and all the people involved were trying to answer in: how do we carry this work forward? The plan itself, as a framework, makes some recommendations, and really the choices were: do we create a new organization to do this? Does this live within one of our local governments, specifically the town or the county, or can we take a network-based approach where we, in a sense, we decentralize it a bit, decouple it somewhat from government, make sure it's something that doesn't just live within a department in a governing entity, and everybody ultimately decided that was the approach they wanted to take. So Mainstreet sits in this position of acting as a host organization for destination stewardship in the community. That means that we have specific relationships with the town and the county in terms of funding and contracting that they're going to commit to destination stewardship, and we're able to make the bureaucratic process slightly more easy.
Sure.
Ensuring that every time an initiative, a program, or a project comes up, it doesn't have to go through a lengthy RFP process that it might have to go through at the town or the county. That we can kind of deliver resources a bit more quickly to some of these things that are going to happen as a result of this initiative.
Jesse mentioned some regular meetings that have been happening for quite a while now. Who's at those meetings? Who's at the table? What number of people? And are all the government entities that you're talking about at a seat at the table?
Yes, and quite a few more. So originally, the steering committee was formed, with representatives from multiple governing entities, including the town and the county. And we're not just talking some of the elected officials, but also some key staff members, and then a lot of organizations, and I can't mention them all, but just to give you an idea, we have representation from UNM, from entities like the Chamber of Commerce, Taos Mainstreet, businesses that are directly functioning within the tourism sector. We're a part of that. Kit Carson Electric, the utility company, Taos Ski Valley. So a lot of entities that directly interface with tourism, but also tangentially a lot of entities that obviously deal with tourism in maybe a less direct way as well.
Yeah. Do you have folks at the table who are just community members at large, folks who just live in the historic district especially, but just in general?
Yes, always. And the invitation was always open to community members too. Anybody who has an interest in this idea was welcome and is still always welcome to participate.
Yeah. Before we dig in a little deeper, can you remind folks how they can learn more about staying connected? I mentioned taosmainstreet.org. There's also the Destination Stewardship website at taos.org. It sounds like that'd be a good place to start for people who want to kind of get a grip on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think those are probably two of the best ways. Another really great way is actually to directly connect with Jessie. So
email me.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can find Jessie at Destination Stewardship at taosmainstreet.org, and she's a great connection point for anybody who's interested in this work.
Awesome. Mainstreet Radio is underway. We're here with Charles, Ilona, and Jessie talking about Destination Stewardship. We have a couple of quick messages here, and when we come back, we're going to dig in a little deeper here on True Taos Radio. And we're back. 23 minutes past 9 o'clock here on True Taos Radio. It is Tuesday, September 16th. Mainstreet Radio is underway. Welcome back, Charles.
Good to be back.
We're going to shift the conversation here to Ilona Spruce from Taos Pueblo. Charles, you want to just give a little background and just kind of move us into this next little segment?
Sure. So, something that I think it's really important to hear from Ilona about is why do we actually need an approach like this? And as she spoke earlier, I mean the long history of tourism that has existed here is something I think unique. The Pueblo has a very unique perspective on, because they understand it in a context of centuries, and not just as something that happened a couple of decades ago, perhaps. So Ilona, if you maybe want to just expand a little bit on just the history of tourism and Taos Pueblo.
Thank you, Charles. So going into the Destination Stewardship Plan, the conversations that were first had were about how do we do this? What is the model within our space, within this area and the land? And so, Contessa was like, well, you're right here. And so, really doing a deep dive into realizing that that's what we do, and even acknowledging it. And so realizing that we do stewardship, people coming into our home and visiting and whatnot. And so taking that model and utilizing some of that perspective to introduce the concept of destination stewardship to the town and to the county, essentially, and seeing how we maneuver our community to have a voice and to be able to have an opinion, and also realizing what the Pueblo economy means for the community members and how much of an impact it's always had, traditionally or even historically. Pre-contact, Taos was always a trade hub. We've always had people from the north to the south coming here to trade, predominantly in the fall and predominantly for San Geronimo Day, which it wasn't known as San Geronimo Day then, but it was a harvest feast. And so we had things to trade prior to winter. And so the north and south would come, and it was a time of peace. And so you would make those trades, and then you'd all go your own ways. And then throughout the year, we had relationship with the Jicarilla, with the Southern Pueblos, with the other nomadic tribal communities that are now, forcibly placed on Oklahoma land. And so we had a lot of relationship with the north because of the mountain range being here. And so we've always had that visitor concept of welcoming, taking care of people, and just opening our door. But when you think of tourism, there's a fine line of it being invasive, but also resourceful. And so that's where I think there was a time for Taos and the Pueblo to take time during pandemic to really assess how much of an impact we see of tourism coming in, how much we've seen how the typical visitor has changed, versus even prior to COVID. I was just telling Jessie, 19 was a great year. I would even say 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 were all great years for tourism. But I'll tell you, 19 before COVID hit or pandemic hit, I was burnt out. I was like, how are we going to keep up this momentum? We had so many people coming through in those years, and being able to assess and look at how and what the impact is, not only on our community, but even the environmentally and everything along those lines, of people coming into these spaces and essentially utilizing them. And how much are we overutilizing them? Are we overutilizing the village? And so that was something that really came into play. And when I got asked to be a part of the core group that came with Contessa, bringing people together at first, and she did it in such a organic way of being we just need your voice. We really need your voice.
Yeah.
It's not a meeting. We need your voice. And I was like, okay. And because I was, I had the same concerns that a lot of other individuals had of, I want to give my time and energy to this. And I want to give, my resource to this so that way we all do it right. And we all have a voice at the table. And, and there was one thing that I really made clear is that tourism's not going to end until the Pueblo closes its doors. And a lot of, we have about 100,000 people that come in every year. And that's truly from May to the mid-October range after Balloon Fiesta. And so other than that, those other months are trickling time. But for the most part, I wanted to make sure that giving that opinion that people understood that I'm really coming from a voice of the fact that we need to figure out how to finesse this and manage it in a way where, we're protecting what Taos is and what what all of our cultures coming together make Taos. I mean, that's why people want to live here, want to come here, because there's like multi layers. Do we know how it works? No, we don't. We just know that it's been over 500 years of living here in the valley with all these cultures coming together and creating what Taos is.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that that's protected, that it's not bought out, that we don't overutilize it as well. And so these were the conversations, that were had within the group, and everyone from even the Forest Service was there to our one of our shop owners in the town, and having those conversations of how we can all benefit and how we can educate people. And that really came full circle with the education piece, is that there needs to be something when they get here about, we have the visitor center, but more importantly, how do we educate people? And we're seeing a different kind of visitor now, like a younger demographic just doesn't want to be wine and dined and then they leave. They want to be brought into the community. They want to experience like who the community is, which sometimes is hard because we've always had tourism here. So even in town, we have these we only go to these certain spots, like we're trying to protect it. But we also need to educate people that if you do go to these areas, that you need to, make sure you clean up after yourself, that it is a special place, and that it is, it's heartfelt for us to be sharing this with you, not the fact that, you can just come and, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So that's really where, the conversations led, is that how do we manage people coming into the community, and how do we manage the storyline? Taos has so many layers and so many angles that you can take. And so, how do we capture telling our story? And so that was something that really came out with having the Pueblo at the table, is that we do that every day. And so, we see people coming in who, in some instances, have never seen a Native person. We've had some really interesting conversations with people asking, even just the blatant ignorance that comes out of the education. The education that we see in the United States is really interesting. Or the level of what they know of Native people or indigenous communities. And a lot of times the ignorance is very high. And so that's where we take it on, that it is our responsibility to curve that, to educate people, to let them know that, let's see, an example of, not all Native people go to school for free, or we don't have, free health care that is fantastic and magnificent. That there's a lot of assumptions that are made about the Native community based off of mainstream television or whatever your niche is. And a perspective that we have is the international tourist. And that perspective is very much so more because they're coming into such a foreign space, they educate themselves about where they're coming, who they're coming to see. And so they're kind of, I was telling the group, when we first started, they're kind of the example.
Yeah, like the model. Yeah.
The model that we want people to do. We want people to learn about Taos before they come here. And then if they don't, there should be tools and resources for them to learn. And so that's really where this all came from, is that the Pueblo does it every day, and how do we maneuver that? And, my tour guides, I really appreciate them, and then the parking monitors as well. They're such a young group within the community that deals with such an intense amount of questions and inquiry of their home, and they really do a great job of maneuvering that. And we give them training, we train with them and whatnot. But for the most part, when you're out there, you're really on your own, and you really have to see how people interact with you. And so that's also another layer, that eventually Jessie will go into that of, maneuvering. How do we handle, these quirky interactions that do come along within the community? And, I'm not going to say that, it's easy. Yeah, it's not. And the Pueblo has been doing it for a long time. We just now with the state of where we're at in, of being acknowledged and whatnot, we just kind of have the upper hand on it now.
Yeah.
But we've really had to maneuver and work through quirks and, racial tension and everything along those lines. And I'm glad that, within the group, it was very much so acknowledged that, the history that's here within Taos is very, today it's beautiful. We have this multicultural component, but that didn't come with, a lot of really like horrible history. Like we've come a long ways.
Sure.
And having the Destination Stewardship plan and network and having it institutionally maneuvered, and I shouldn't say institutionally, but just maneuvered and supported by not only county but the town, really gives it some backbone that we can maneuver this all together.
Yeah, kind of validates.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Ilona Spruce. Mainstreet Radio is underway. We're talking about the Destination Stewardship Program and Network here in Taos and northern New Mexico. Ilona, you talked about the 5 years prior to the pandemic as being good years. By what measure? Was it just by the number of people and the economic infusion? But did you find there was more respect from the people that were visiting? And do you feel like this education is trickling down to the people who are showing up here?
Yeah, like, so we had, and I guess what my value of good years is like, the number of people, but also we had really cool interactions with tour guides, like really positive interactions, people just being so much more understanding of the history that they're telling. Also a lot of support. Like there was just this huge wave of like support for indigenous communities that was really around during that time, and acknowledgement. And we had a lot more people who were just more educated about indigenous communities and what indigenous means. And actually, and then we saw like a maneuvering, like in 1819, of like land acknowledgements happening across the country, which was really cool. Because then you saw Native and indigenous communities being acknowledged on a national level, which there were still people that were coming through our doors that didn't even realize that we're still like in existence. And or not realizing that we don't, we're not in our costume,
right?
Quote unquote. Right. And we're not waiting for them to come through our doors, and so there was much more of this, like wanting to get to know the community, but in a respectful manner. So that was my gauge of those years prior to COVID. But we did, because people were a younger demographic was traveling, I think that's where we were seeing some of that.
Yeah.
We were seeing a lot of educators traveling during that time. We had multiple universities from overseas coming in and doing workshops and stuff with Pueblo community members. And that was another level, is that community members were being, tapped into to give perspective and story and history. And there was a lot of great relationship build that even I had with the community members at the Pueblo, and having those relationships build so we can tell our history, tell our story. So that's my gauge of those years. And then when we went into pandemic, though, it was a realization of how much I was working and doing, and then just pretty exhausted.
Yeah.
So I really, there's a double edge for me with pandemic. It was horrible and awful, but it was also this like real, like pause to really look and observe and realize the layers of tourism within the Pueblo and how much of an impact each person or community member within the Pueblo is impacted by tourism. And when that was taken away, what that also was as well.
Yeah, it's what a great opportunity to see it on kind of a smaller scale, right? We kind of can extrapolate to what it means for the Taos, the greater Taos community, and the other cultures. From all you learned over those years, I assume you did bring these ideas to the Destination Stewardship table, and now tasked with how do we kind of keep it going, right? You talk about educating people and informing people and, kind of trying to convey the necessity of respect. And, maybe it's a positive byproduct of the woke culture. I don't really like to use that word, but, people are thinking about it now, right? And here they are now giving more attention. You said especially the international tourists do their research and come and realize that they need to be respectful, but not just of Taos Pueblo, but of any place that they're visiting, right? Downtown Taos or any area of Taos County. So let's kind of bring it back to Destination Stewardship, because it sounds like you got a lot of valuable learning from what goes on there at the Pueblo and the tourism of Taos Pueblo. What steps are being taken? I mean, how do we kind of execute a lot of these ideas that Ilona are putting out there?
Good question.
Yeah.
And I think, taking, again, if we're looking at this idea of stewardship and defining it as caring for a place that balances the needs of residents, of people who live here, with visitors, I think there's a lot there. Education is a huge piece of that, and I think education starts around values, around shared values of our community. What exactly are those, and how do we transmit those in a way to people who visit, who are already here visiting, but people who may be thinking about coming here and visiting. So I think it really starts with value. I think it starts with the acknowledgement of like Taos is home to people and has been home to many peoples for a very, very long time. It's not a playground. It's not a playground for people to just come and kind of do as they will.
Yeah, nor is it a zoo where people are coming to just observe and see how these people live, whether it's on the Pueblo or people who live like me in the historic district. And I always am confronted with, wow, you actually live right here on the plaza. It's like such a interesting take that people have on, it's like this magical place, which it is, but people are maybe coming for the wrong reasons at times, and not realizing that it is our home and that it is more than just a tourist destination.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of that does come to how we promote and market this place. I think, I don't want to beat up on our neighbors to the north too much, but I think we can take some really valuable lessons from things that have happened to some mountain towns in Colorado. When we look at places like Breckenridge and Telluride and Crested Butte, just to name a few, when the idea behind marketing and tourism is really like maximizing visitation with no thought to the cost of that, you end up with some scenarios like those towns are experiencing, where the people who live and work in those communities can no longer afford to actually live in those communities. So now they're having, their workforce and the people who run those towns are having to move several towns away to then, commute an hour or more to work in some of those towns. And I think that's a real downstream impact that sort of unintentional tourism marketing can lead to.
Yeah.
So we want to. It's really important to kind of look at a national level at like some of the real costs of tourism and think about, okay, how can we actually mitigate some of those costs.
Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to bop in there too, because I think when you look at a systemic level of tourism and how it contributes to an economy, there is that dynamic, Charles, you were talking about with housing that we're all very aware of right now. With tourism in our local communities comes a tax on where the heads in beds lay. And that tax it's called lodger's tax, and can go directly into community investment. So either helping local businesses promote themselves with the county lodger's tax grant program that Taos County is putting on. But then also our neighbors to the north, they have passed something recently in their legislation that they can use a portion of their lodger's tax to invest in housing. So I think it's really interesting when you start seeing these things instead of in their silos as potentially contributing to one another. And on the housing subject, I wanted to pose another question to you, Ilona, with talking about how Destination Stewardship is all about reminding people that people live here. And that's something you've been dealing with at the Pueblo for a long time, right? Because the beautiful image of the Pueblo is historic. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's also people's homes. And I was wondering if you could talk about how do you approach educating visitors or engaging visitors in that conversation of like, hey, people live here. It's not Disneyland.
All right. Thank you, Jessie. So basically, I mean, it comes down to when visitors first come into the village or when they first inquire about our home. And, they're like, well, I want to see the historic site. So one thing that we have had happen within the office is that we really, get on the assistants and anyone who's answering the phone makes that correction. No, our home. Like, you're coming to visit our home. And people are really caught off guard by that, but it's taking a stance. It's making sure that people understand that before they even enter. And then even getting our staff all on board with that terminology of, not just calling, not identifying ourselves, like, oh, the Pueblo. No, our home. And so we've really maneuvered a lot of, technique and whatnot with the staff, especially about how they talk about our home.
Yeah, I imagine it could get even confrontational, right? Some people
It
feel
can.
like, well, they're inviting me in. This is now my place.
Yeah, and then we are to the point now after pandemic of really where we're kind of on that cusp of making the tours. That you have to take them during your visit, because right now they are optional. Like you can either go through, but even on the pamphlets that we give out, there's like, welcome to our home. Like,
Right.
It's like a constant word that's utilized throughout the visit for a visitor to understand that it is our home. And then working and talking, to shopkeepers, and they don't realize kind of, what I'm doing at times is that when I get them to talk about the Pueblo, I want to hear them saying our home. And so for the most part, they're an older generation as well. And they do, constantly say, well, this is our home.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Words are powerful.
Yeah. And it's that reiteration, but truly, like when we do our marketing piece, is that we continue that welcome to our home, or, you'll be engaging with our home. And, we do ads with, larger companies like USA Today and New York Times with their Horizon inserts, and and we do overseas advertising through UNESCO, and the UNESCO status actually really helps in that perspective, because we can utilize the living site status. There's only about 15 living sites around the world that are part of the World Heritage Site list. And so we're really unique. And so we use that to our advantage, is that, highlighting in our international advertisements and whatnot, is that we're a living community. Anytime anyone's doing anything in the village, I try and highlight it as much. Even with like Dawn Butterfly and like Lyle with Lyle's Creations. Anytime there's a community member doing something great and like a little more extraordinary than most, I really try and highlight that, because it highlights the fact that we have people that are part of the community, that are thriving, that come from this culture and that thrive in it, and that still are here, living here within Taos.
Yeah.
But we also say too, like with the housing situation, if we didn't have the Pueblo, I don't know where we would be living as well. So, we see, and then we have our housing shortage too on the Pueblo. So, but that idea of wanting to stay here because we're so connected to our home, wanting to live here no matter, what it takes. And so all of that, getting that essence and being able to transfer that to a tourist or a visitor. And when they come back out and realizing that, Taos just isn't this destination where they can come and play.
Right.
That they really need to take it into consideration that they are walking where our ancestors walked. And that's really where the tour comes in, with talking about like the Pueblo Revolt, the Taos Rebellion, and even that story of the church. And I always tell the guides, we have this whole index of things that they can mention. And one of them is mentioning that we still find cannonballs in those areas. And, that you're walking in history, but we live it every day. Mm. And so, we're sharing this with you. And that's another part of it, is that giving them that opportunity, that an acknowledgement that they're coming into the space, but that we're sharing it with you. And so that was something that came in with Destination Stewardship too, is that we talked about how do we maneuver that in that thought process of that we're sharing something with.
Yeah. It sounds like incredibly valuable learning from Taos Pueblo and what it means for the hundreds of years that you've been kind of dealing with tourism, for lack of a better word, because tourism probably didn't even exist as a word a few hundred years ago. But it certainly can be applied, and I think Destination Stewardship has a lot to learn from that, where it's a little bit more visible because it's such a small community, and you can see how it directly affects all of its community members. And no easy task, but something I'm sure Destination Stewardship and Taos Mainstreet and all of us are trying to kind of apply here in Taos and in the greater northern New Mexico area. So we're running out of time. Time sure flies. Ilona, Spruce, I really appreciate you taking some time to share with us this important component and really kind of the essence of what Destination Stewardship is trying to achieve, right? Again, it's no small undertaking. Charles, do you have any thoughts on closing here?
Actually, I think this is a perfect opportunity to let Jessie close us out.
Okay.
So if Jessie could just touch on, some of the mechanisms for action, some of the things that, we've heard a lot about, this concept of destination stewardship, the education, where we're moving, what we need to continue to learn and promote. But I think Jessie can really wrap us up with talking about, okay, what is happening right now and how can people continue to be involved in the conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Thanks, Howie. Thanks, Ilona. This has been really fun. It is amazing how fast time flies. Yeah, especially talking about something as nuanced as destination stewardship and thousands of years of history. So the Destination Stewardship Network, one thing that I want to emphasize is that it's a coalition of people that have come together to have their voice heard and to come up with creative ideas and to jump into innovating, not necessarily reach for perfection, but to practice and to try because time flies, So Destination Stewardship as a network and hosted by Taos Mainstreet is not an organization. It's not this entity that has been tasked with completing a list of bulleted items on a plan. It's a coalition of people that have come together to collectively see that plan as a framework and see where they want to jump in, where they have energy, where they're excited, and where they see the biggest need for our community right now. So what does that look like? Where is their energy this year? We have a few different things happening. If you go to taos.org and under the stewardship tab on their website, you can learn a little bit about the Destination Stewardship Plan process, and we have 9 stewardship goals. And the second one is equity and inclusion, which has been a really, really important part. Ilona spoke to ensuring everybody has a piece of the pie and is considered in the opportunities as well as the impacts of tourism. And so some things that were suggested by the CREST GW or George Washington University team, who are our consultants, was to work with a few different levers when it comes to equity and inclusion in this economic contributor of our economy here in Taos, which was one, looking to support businesses that are tied to culture and are tied to place in innovating and diversifying their revenue through tourism. So right now we're working with an action team on looking at how can we support small businesses in diversifying the revenue with tourism and small businesses in our communities that traditionally haven't benefited from tourism. So we're working with a few folks in agriculture, in the agricultural space and land stewardship space to uplift our stories of our acequias. And do so through revenue generation. And then we're also working with some businesses that want to do the same kind of thing with Adobe and having those conversations and making sure to be really thoughtful about the words and the invitation when pursuing revenue. Because if we're only pursuing revenue, and this has been a huge theme today, then we lose sight of a lot of other things. But if you make the business case for being thoughtful and sustainable and culturally sensitive and inclusive, then that just makes a business all the stronger and a community all the stronger. So we're supporting through some innovative business projects. We're supporting with cultural events. Before the end of the year, we're going to be launching and announcing our business innovation program and our cultural events support. And those are both looking at increasing capacity through investment as well as different capacity building trainings and initiatives. So there's that. It's not just all talk. There's also a concerted investment.
Yeah.
A concerted investment of time, of funding, of knowledge, and it's been really fun. Did I cover all the things that are coming down the line, or some of the things?
We got to some of them. I don't think it's possible to cover all of them in this time frame. But lastly, Jessie, again, people are interested in this idea. How do they get involved?
Oh, great question, Charles. So if you want to get involved, one space you can go to is taos.org under the stewardship tab, and you can learn a little bit about our process. And the other way is that you can contact me. My name is Jessie Hook. I'm the Destination Stewardship Network Manager, and my email is destinationstewardship@taosmainstreet.org. If you're interested in knowing more or getting involved, please reach out. It's destinationstewardship@taosmainstreet.org. I would love to chat. And huge thank you for having us on today. And huge thank you, Ilona, for speaking to how tourism has affected Taos Pueblo and your experience with Destination Stewardship. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much. We'll do this again in about a month. And looking forward to it. We'll keep folks up to date on when the program will happen exactly. Like I said earlier, it'll probably be the third Tuesday of every month. But we'll have opportunities for you guys to come in, and especially if there's some actual events to kind of help get the word out about. We're, of course, happy to do that as well. Charles, Jessie, Ilona, thank you so much for your time this morning. Marcus, cold beer in your ears in the house. Time flies, right? Name of his program. Coming up next, so it seems fitting because we saw that time does indeed fly when we're having fun. Charles, thank you, and we'll see you in a month.
All right, thank you, Howie.